Diddy sold me to his sugar daddy and I barely managed to escape from there. Diddy and his sons tortured me a lot. I'm going to file a case against them. When Diddy adopted me, I was very young, but Diddy used to kiss me. He used to take me to his parties, and what I saw there is beyond description. Diddy used me.
One of the kids that was one of the party favors, and a party favors means that you're set on top of a table and you're used as a toy for anybody who comes across the table or who wants to party at a certain time of night when the music stops and then the DJ starts flashing all these lights and they close the doors, and then everybody turns into like a frenzy and starts going into a crazed animal-like demonic state.
The story erupted quietly before exploding online, when whispers around Diddy's adopted daughter suddenly turned into unavoidable headlines everywhere globally. What began as scattered comments quickly evolved into a full-scale family drama that challenged the carefully polished public image. For years, the brand around wealth, loyalty, and control felt untouchable, protected by influence, money, and carefully managed silence tactics. That illusion cracked the moment personal experiences were described with raw detail, emotional weight, and unsettling consistency from within home. According to accounts circulating online, the environment behind closed doors felt less like family and more like strategy-driven daily. Statements hinted at emotional distance, rigid expectations, and power dynamics that shaped every interaction inside that household over many years. Nothing sounded accidental, as routines, rules, and reactions appeared designed to reinforce authority rather than nurture connection consistently without question.
I'm a Scorpio.
No. What's your last name?
Ava Combs.
What's your other last name?
Ava Baroni.
Eva Baroni Combs? Yes, it's breaking news. Diddy adopted a white child. I want you to tell them the story about how I adopted you. But you still have beautiful parents but you're my child also. Please tell the story.
So, I was on the streets, and then Papa Combs decided that he would like to be a caring man.
Observers noted how public appearances contrasted sharply with private realities being described in these unfolding narratives across multiple platforms online. Every revelation added another layer, suggesting emotional strain had been normalized long before cameras ever entered those carefully staged rooms. Rather than sudden chaos, the situation resembled pressure finally escaping after years of careful containment behind expensive walls and guards. Online discussions quickly shifted from shock to pattern recognition, connecting past rumors with present testimony shared across entertainment media circles. Many questioned how such dynamics could remain hidden while existing in plain sight for so long within elite industry spaces. The adopted daughter's perspective reframed familiar stories, casting new shadows over moments once dismissed as rumors by public relations teams. Instead of focusing on spectacle, the details emphasized emotional costs, identity struggles, and blurred parental boundaries within powerful celebrity households. Listeners sensed a recurring theme of conditional acceptance tied closely to performance, obedience, and image maintenance enforced through subtle pressure. This framing shifted the narrative from gossip toward a broader conversation about control and vulnerability inside fame-driven family structures. While names and specifics remained limited, the emotional truth carried weight regardless of missing details shared repeatedly with visible conviction. Supporters argued that speaking out itself signaled courage within an ecosystem built on silence, fear, loyalty contracts, power, money, influence. Critics responded cautiously, emphasizing that public claims invite scrutiny, timelines, and competing interpretations across social media blogs, podcasts, interviews, commentaries. Still, the momentum felt irreversible, with conversations spreading far beyond entertainment gossip circles into cultural, social, and psychological discussions worldwide. Each retelling reinforced the sense that something foundational had shifted in public perception regarding power, family loyalty, fame, control, legacy. The scandal narrative grew not through exaggeration, but through repetition of consistent emotional experiences described calmly, steadily, publicly, openly, repeatedly.
Don't see the lineup?
Yeah, we see the lineup. I'm just waiting to see who's next.
Jay-Z is setting Diddy up. Why is everyone having such a hard time? He ain't doing shit different.
What unsettled audiences most was how ordinary the pain sounded beneath extraordinary circumstances involving fame, fortune, cameras, security, status, power. The first wave of revelations ended not with answers, but with heavier questions lingering across timelines, relationships, intentions, responsibilities, accountability. By the close, the narrative had firmly shifted from curiosity to uncomfortable reflection about power, parenting, influence, silence, image, truth. As the discussion deepened, attention turned toward how identity forms when upbringing is shaped by image management and constant evaluation. Commentators pointed out that adoption within powerful circles carries unique challenges rarely acknowledged in glossy public narratives. The accounts suggested belonging often felt conditional, granted when expectations were met and withdrawn when independence surfaced. This dynamic blurred emotional lines, replacing traditional support with transactional approval tied directly to public presentation. Behind luxury settings, emotional security appeared unstable, influenced by reputation risks and external perceptions. Analysts noted how silence becomes a survival mechanism when power imbalances dominate family structures. Speaking out disrupts that balance, shifting leverage away from authority and toward personal truth. That disruption explains the intensity of reactions following the revelations. Some rushed to defend legacy, while others re-examined long-held assumptions about control. Industry insiders quietly acknowledged that similar stories circulate often but rarely reach daylight. Fame creates insulation, allowing questionable dynamics to persist without challenge. When those walls crack, the fallout extends far beyond one household. Audiences began reflecting on broader patterns across celebrity culture. The conversation moved from individuals to systems, enabling emotional neglect. Questions arose about accountability, guardianship, and ethical responsibility within influential families. Public sympathy grew as listeners recognized familiar emotional themes. The pain described did not require wealth to understand.
So then he saw me and decided to pick me up and said to come inside and play with his kids.
Hey, that's like a little bit like borderline suspect. I don't want nobody, we want to get it clear. I adopted you like Madonna adopted kids and everybody else adopted kids, Charlize Theron, everybody that's ever adopted Sandra Bullock. I adopted you because I felt that you could, enjoy also having a black parent to take care of you and help you.
It echoed universal struggles for validation, safety, and autonomy. That relatability fueled engagement, pushing the story beyond niche gossip spaces. Media coverage intensified, careful to avoid conclusions while amplifying discussion. Each outlet framed the situation as part of a larger reckoning. The narrative now carried implications for how celebrity families are perceived. Control, once marketed as discipline, appeared increasingly troubling. The adopted daughter's voice became central, impossible to dismiss or minimize. By the end, the scandal stood less as shock value and more as cultural mirror. As the story continued to spread, reactions inside the entertainment industry became noticeably restrained yet deeply revealing. Public statements were cautious, carefully worded, and often avoided addressing the emotional core of the revelations. Silence from longtime associates spoke louder than any denial, reinforcing the idea that unspoken rules still governed powerful circles. Behind the scenes, however, insiders acknowledged that the narrative struck uncomfortably close to realities many preferred to keep buried. The adopted daughter's account disrupted a long-standing myth that wealth automatically guarantees stability. Instead, it highlighted how privilege can sometimes amplify isolation rather than prevent it. Observers noted that children raised within celebrity households often grow up under constant surveillance where privacy is scarce and authenticity becomes risky. In such environments, emotional expression can feel like liability rather than release. Control is frequently justified as protection, yet the line between guidance and dominance becomes dangerously thin. The unfolding scandal forced audiences to reconsider how often discipline is weaponized under the guise of love. Every detail shared carried implications beyond one family, pointing toward a culture that rewards obedience while punishing vulnerability. As more commentators weighed in, the discussion shifted toward psychological impact rather than surface-level drama. The idea that emotional neglect leaves scars as deep as visible harm gained traction across platforms. Support networks formed online, with individuals sharing parallel experiences from less glamorous backgrounds. That collective response reinforced the universality of the pain being described. The narrative no longer belongs solely to one household, but to anyone shaped by power imbalances at home. Attempts to discredit the story appeared increasingly ineffective, as consistency and emotional coherence strengthened its credibility. Rather than spiraling into sensationalism, the discourse matured into reflection. The industry's usual damage control strategies struggled against an audience demanding accountability. Each passing day cemented the sense that something irreversible had occurred. The adopted daughter's voice lingered, steady and unresolved, challenging a system that thrives on silence. What emerged was not a takedown, but a reckoning, exposing how fame often masks emotional fractures instead of healing them. Over time, the focus settled on long-term consequences rather than immediate shock. Viewers began asking how many similar stories never reached the public. The scandal became a case study in how power shapes childhood experiences. It forced a reconsideration of what responsibility truly means when influence replaces intimacy. The lasting impact lay not in headlines, but in the uncomfortable awareness left behind. That awareness refused to fade, lingering across conversations and media analysis alike. It suggested that true damage often hides behind success. The story encouraged deeper scrutiny of celebrity narratives. In doing so, it reshaped expectations, demanding humanity over mythology and truth over carefully curated images presented to the world. This shift marked a rare moment where spectacle gave way to substance, leaving audiences unsettled, reflective, and increasingly unwilling to accept silence as explanation or excuse ever again. The conversation continued, reshaping how stories of power, family, and accountability are heard across modern celebrity culture permanently worldwide. In the aftermath, the focus shifted toward what accountability looks like when influence shields decision-makers from consequence. The revelations reopened debates about guardianship within elite households and whether existing protections truly serve children raised under fame. Experts emphasized that emotional well-being cannot be replaced by material comfort, regardless of status. The adopted daughter's story highlighted how systems often prioritize reputation management over personal development. That imbalance can distort family roles, turning caregivers into authority figures first and emotional anchors second. Observers pointed out that constant exposure to media scrutiny can stunt self-expression. When every action risks becoming a headline, authenticity becomes a threat. This environment often rewards silence, teaching young people to suppress discomfort to preserve image. The scandal challenged that conditioning by validating personal truth publicly. As audiences absorbed the implications, empathy replaced disbelief. Many recognize similar dynamics in non-celebrity contexts, stripped of glamour but rooted in control. The conversation expanded into discussions about trauma, boundaries, and healing. Media narratives began framing the situation as a warning rather than isolated drama. The idea that unchecked power corrodes intimacy resonated widely. Critics attempting to minimize the account faced growing resistance. Consistency and restraint in the storytelling strengthened its impact. There were no dramatic reversals, only steady insistence on lived experience. That steadiness undermined attempts to reframe the narrative as attention-seeking. Over time, the scandal evolved into a broader critique of celebrity culture itself. Fame was no longer portrayed as protection, but as amplifier of existing flaws. The adopted daughter's voice became symbolic of those unheard within powerful systems. What lingered was an unease about how many similar stories remain untold. The situation encouraged audiences to question admiration without scrutiny. In doing so, it reframed the cost of idolization. The lasting effect was not outrage, but awareness. The story served as a reminder that influence carries responsibility, especially within families. Without accountability, silence becomes legacy. The discussion pushed toward prevention, emphasizing emotional safeguards, transparency, and healthier definitions of success. It reinforced the idea that true legacy is measured by care, not control, and by honesty rather than image. Over time, this awareness reshaped audience expectations, demanding higher standards from those in power. Celebrity narratives, once accepted at face value, now face deeper examination. The scandal contributed to a slow cultural shift where personal testimony gained legitimacy. It highlighted the need for empathy within public discourse. Rather than consuming drama, viewers engaged with meaning. That engagement marked progress. It suggested that stories of vulnerability can influence change when heard. The final impact rested in consciousness raised, boundaries questioned, and a renewed insistence on accountability beyond fame. This moment stood as a reminder that power must be examined, families protected, and voices valued regardless of status or influence. Only then can cycles of silence break and healthier legacies emerge within public life. This story ultimately reinforced that truth, and that awareness matters more than headlines ever will in history permanently. As time passed, the broader impact of the revelations became impossible to ignore, especially as public conversation moved away from personalities and toward long-standing power structures. What initially appeared as a private family dispute evolved into a case study on how authority operates when shielded by wealth and status. Analysts began pointing out that celebrity families often function more like corporations than homes, with hierarchy, branding, and risk management shaping emotional decisions. In such environments, children are not only raised but positioned, expected to represent values, loyalty, and silence as part of a larger image. The adopted daughter's account exposed how that pressure can fracture identity over time. When belonging is tied to compliance, self-expression becomes dangerous. Viewers noted that the most unsettling aspect was not any single claim, but the emotional consistency behind them. There was no sense of chaos or exaggeration, only a steady recounting of experiences that felt deeply processed rather than impulsive. That calm delivery challenged attempts to dismiss the story as temporary noise. Cultural commentators emphasized that silence within powerful families is often misinterpreted as harmony. In reality, it can signal fear, dependency, or unresolved imbalance. The scandal reignited conversations about how adoption intersects with power, especially when gratitude is expected rather than care guaranteed. Observers questioned whether adopted children in elite households face added pressure to prove worthiness. That dynamic, when combined with fame, creates emotional conditions few are equipped to navigate safely. The story also prompted reflection on how loyalty is enforced behind the scenes. When resources and influence are centralized, resistance becomes costly. Speaking out risks isolation, disbelief, and backlash, yet silence carries long-term emotional consequences. The adopted daughter's willingness to break that silence reframed the narrative from betrayal to self-preservation. Audiences increasingly viewed the situation through a lens of survival rather than rebellion. This shift reduced sensationalism and elevated the discussion. Instead of asking what happened, people began asking why such environments are normalized. The focus turned toward prevention, questioning how many young voices are muted before reaching adulthood. The scandal's endurance came from its resonance. It mirrored experiences far beyond celebrity culture, touching on universal struggles with control, validation, and autonomy. That relatability ensured the conversation would not fade quickly. Each mention reinforced the idea that emotional neglect does not require physical absence. It thrives in proximity when empathy is missing. The story lingered because it challenged comfort. It asked audiences to reconsider admiration, authority, and the cost of maintaining flawless public images at the expense of private well-being. In doing so, it reshaped how similar stories may be received in the future. By the final stage of public discussion, the narrative had settled into something heavier than scandal. It became a reflection on accountability and the long shadow cast by unchecked influence. Commentators stressed that fame does not excuse emotional harm, nor does success erase responsibility. The adopted daughter's voice stood as a reminder that legacy is built at home before it is displayed publicly. The absence of dramatic counter-narratives further solidified the story's impact. Without explosive rebuttals, the focus remained on the substance rather than spectacle. Over time, the revelations encouraged audiences to slow down their consumption of celebrity drama and listen more closely to underlying themes. Conversations turned toward healing, boundaries, and the importance of acknowledging harm without defensiveness. The situation highlighted how often power resists introspection, choosing silence over accountability. Yet silence, once broken, cannot easily be restored. The ripple effect extended into broader cultural awareness, pushing viewers to question how admiration can cloud judgment. The scandal underscored that influence magnifies responsibility rather than diminishes it. As public interest stabilized, what remained was awareness rather than outrage. That awareness mattered. It suggested progress in how stories of vulnerability are received. Instead of dismissing discomfort, audiences leaned into it. The adopted daughter's experience became symbolic of voices long ignored in similar dynamics. The lasting takeaway was not condemnation, but caution. Power without empathy corrodes relationships. Families shaped by image risk losing authenticity. And silence, while protective in the short term, often becomes destructive over time. This chapter of the story closed not with resolution, but with a shift in perception. It encouraged deeper scrutiny, empathy, and accountability within public discourse. If nothing else, it reinforced that truth does not need spectacle to be powerful. Sometimes it only needs space to be heard. If this breakdown helped clarify the situation and added perspective, make sure to support the content by liking the video and subscribing for more in-depth stories like this.